soy la profesora Dorcas. Hola, bienvenidos al mio canal. Mi chiamo Dorcas. Je m'appelle Dorcas. Okay, let's stop playing. As you can tell, I'm excited because this year I've been able to help about three university students successfully end their English courses. And that makes me happy. But we're going to talk about that today because I didn't set out in life to be a teacher. Okay. So let's get down to business. Welcome to Chit Chat with the African in Ecuador. My name is Dorcas Glader. And if you're seeing me for the first time, please do consider subscribing to my channel. I'm a Nigerian Congolese living in Ecuador. I speak the Spanish, I speak the Italian, I speak the French. But today I wanted to share with you my passion for language learning and the advantages of being multilingual. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. I trained as a nurse, okay? I went to St. Gerard's School of Nursing, Kakuri, Kaduna in northern Nigeria, or the Middle Belt. So a lot of people say they don't like to be called North. Yeah, Kaduna State is in the Middle Belt of Nigeria. So I'm a trained nurse by profession. I got married, went with my husband to settle down in South Africa. Unfortunately, horror affairs, as we all foreigners call the home affairs in South Africa, did not make it possible for me to get licensed and to practice my nursing career. So for the 8 years I lived in South Africa, I never worked as a nurse. And it was essentially being kicked from pillar to post by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Home Affairs. So I couldn't practice. And if you're familiar with the situation in South Africa, you know about the xenophobic attacks. The last one that hit was, I think, in 2016 thereabout. And my husband said it was time to jackpa, jackpa. If you're not Nigerian, you don't know what jackpa is. Jackpa simply means migrate, but the intensity of the word reminds me of elope. So if you're a Yoruba, kindly let us know what is the meaning of jackpa down below. Okay, I'd love to know what does the word jackpa means, because everywhere now, even the movies, you hear people say he has jackpot, they jackpot. It just simply means they migrated. Okay, so we had to migrate again because it didn't serve the initial purpose of us having left Nigeria. So when we came to Ecuador, we came in a hurry. Yeah, like we just got enough money for our ticket. We had made contact with the brethren here. If you want a full story, let me know in the comment section. And leave a like for me. I'm going to tell you a very fantastic story. You're going to learn a lot. So let's continue. When we had made our contact and everything, we came here ill-informed. And this is the lesson that I learned, that when you're in a marriage or in a partnership, don't allow one person to be responsible for life-changing decisions. I had just trusted the word of my husband, and he just told me whatever he told me. I never made the effort to go to the embassy and check for myself. We didn't go to the embassy. We just based our decision on what we had read online. One. Two, a supposed staff of the Embassy of Ecuador. So when we came here, the believers tried to regulate our papers to elongate our stay. And then we found out what they call apostille. Yeah, apostille is where your state, meaning your country, certifies whatever document you have earned, maybe by marriage, by academic pursuit, or whatsoever legal document that they recognize it as being issued from that government. So it's a legalization. Yeah, thank you. We are not part of the Hague, Nigeria, I mean, and so we didn't know about anything like legalization of any documents, neither Nigeria nor South Africa. And so we came here. My documents were not legalized, they were not apostilled, and that dashed my hopes of pursuing my career. The plan was that I was going to come here, learn the language, and maybe do a crash course just to refresh my nursing memory and apply for an Ecuadorian nursing license to pursue nursing. Okay, but it didn't work like that, and so I I had to start from afresh. I had to do whatever my hands found to do. I eventually found out that there was a need for English teachers in Ecuador. At the time, there had been a sort of exchange with the, sorry, not an exchange rather, there was an invitation from the Ecuadorian government to Nigeria and Ghana to send them volunteers who would teach their children English in primary and secondary schools. But it was not working. In church, there were a lot of people whose children were not just coping with the language at all. And so I filled that gap. I became an English teacher, first of all with the primary school children from church. I started teaching, and at a point in time, I even taught French because I also speak French. Is actually my first language. So I became a language teacher, basically. That was how I began to work for myself after learning Spanish. I learned Spanish in under a year, let's say, yeah, because before we completed 1 year, I started working as an interpreter just for my husband. And with time, my Spanish improved and I was teaching English. I started having other students here and there, maybe for assignments, who would online, who would need assignments done or things like that. And that was how I turned my passion for language learning into language sharing. And over the years, I have taught quite a dozen, I would say about a dozen people. This year, like I said at the beginning, I have 3 students who are graduating from university. Yesterday, they sent me a WhatsApp to say they passed their final exams, and they were so elated, and I felt elated, and I was happy. But it brought me to thinking, that in my entire life, I had never thought of being a teacher, and when I was growing up, I remember in the early 2000s, late 90s, when you finished high school, you were expected to teach in all those local primary schools until you could go to university. I never wanted to be a teacher, but the older I became, the more I began to understand teenagers, younger people, and I wanted to share my knowledge with them in whatever field it was, and life offered me that opportunity. Okay, so what am I trying to say? A lot of times I hear people say, when life throws you lemons, you make a lemonade out of it. And not everybody likes lemonade because they are sour. Lemons are sour, so not everybody likes a lemonade. So another person said, one person once told me, actually, if life threw her lemons, she will throw them back at life. She refused to catch the lemons that life gives her. Everybody have their way of seeing that philosophy. But in my case, I just rolled with the punches, and it helped me to meet very interesting people. I have been in spaces where I didn't know I would be just because of my language or the languages that I speak, especially English language. It is something that has become very precious. If you're traveled or you are conversant with the internet, you know that English is gradually overtaking the world in terms of technology, innovation, medicine. There's virtually no field now that you do not find a lot of materials that are available for your learning opportunities in English language. I was the other day looking for a country in Europe where they speak English, and they said almost every country in Europe today has a certain percentage or a recognizable percentage of English speakers. Okay, so I'm happy. I am now a teacher. I am now a teacher, and another thing I discovered, you don't have to be trained in a certain field to carry out work in that field. Most of our mothers who were midwives didn't have a formal education. I've been able to teach people English and get them to the point where they can speak by themselves without any training whatsoever. I don't know, it's just that I was passionate about it. I was passionate about language learning. And so as a native speaker of English language, I could teach them my language in their language. And I think that gets the message home better, because the problem the teachers from West Africa had was that they didn't speak Spanish, and that was why the program didn't last. They would just walk into a class, speak English, draw images and what have you, and go out, and the child would just have to memorize. A lot of them were coming to me with assignments, or I'll meet them going to the cyber cafe, and they would just use Google Translate. And it wasn't really beneficial for those kids, because at the end of the day, some of them in private schools and at university level had to offer oral exams. And I think that was where my skill became more effective, was that I could speak Spanish and teach them English in Spanish language. Okay, so I could explain English concepts in their language, which was what our African brothers couldn't do, the ones who were invited here by the Ecuadorian government. So that was another thing that I learned, that you don't really need an education or a formal training to carry out a certain kind of job. And finally, what that has taught me is that being multilingual opens up doors for you. It teaches you people's culture. For me, aside from the fact that I can teach now, I have been able to, through the learning of other people's language, it has broadened my language understanding. So what am I trying to say? It has made me understand English language in a broader and deeper manner. For example, I now know that a lot of the words we use in English do have their roots in um, Latin, which is basically the mother of the four Romance languages that we have. And so there are a lot of words that we have borrowed from French, we have borrowed from Spanish. Basically, English has been an adopting language where we borrow from here and there. Like, for example, the word shampoo. Did you know that the word shampoo is not an English word? Shampoo was borrowed from India. I can't remember if it's Hindi or the other language, but it's from India. The word chef is a French word, and I feel like when I see people say chef, especially my Nigerian brothers. It's a French word. It's chef. And it's the same way the French people borrow from us the word like football, the word like internet. We say internet. We just pronounce it differently. But my language acquisition has really broadened my understanding of various cultures, even among African countries, because I am a mixture or a blend of both Francophone and Anglophone cultures. And that has really helped me evolve, become the person I'm being today, make me more tolerant and an understanding of others. And that's just what I wanted to share, that at the end of the day, life is what happens while we're busy making plans. We came here with our own plans, but this is what life dealt us, and so today my students are graduating. I'm probably going to have other students, and I just wanted to share this with you this Saturday to say it doesn't matter if you don't like lemonades, call it oranges, call it whatever you want. Some people say we roll with the punches. Yeah, I have rolled with the punches in Ecuador. I've worked as a waitress in the restaurant. I have done businesses. I've tried my hand at petty trading, from a career life of mine. I worked as a career person, but Ecuador made me a businesswoman and, so many things. So let me know in the comment section, what is that setback that you thought that life threw you and you were able to make a success of it? And if you are still in that tight corner, I promise you, nothing, absolutely nothing happens in life by chance or by coincidence. There is a purpose, and I do hope that you find that purpose. And I'll see you next week with Chit Chat with African in Ecuador. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a like, consider subscribing, share with someone who you think this story is going to uplift, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.